Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be talking about a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's all about turning those challenges and roadblocks into stepping stones using the wisdom of the Stoics.
And it's amazing how much wisdom those Stoics really had, right?
Yeah.
Even thousands of years later.
Exactly. This book is packed with timeless advice that can really change your perspective, like forever.
It really can. I mean, Holiday lays out such a clear framework in the book, too.
Right.
And it boils down to just three main things: perception, action, and will. And at first, those might seem like kind of simple concepts. But when you actually apply them to the problems and challenges you face, well, the results can be pretty powerful.
Okay, I'm intrigued, so let's break down this framework. And the first thing is perception. The idea of amor fati really caught my attention. Like, loving your fate, that sounds a little intense, doesn't it?
Yeah, at first glance, it can sound a bit extreme.
Yeah.
Like, are we supposed to enjoy being stuck in traffic or dealing with a difficult coworker? But amor fati isn't really about enjoying every single moment, whether it's good or bad.
Okay.
It's more about this idea that everything that happens is a necessary part of your journey.
Yeah.
So instead of resisting obstacles, what if we saw them as like built-in challenges?
Yeah.
Almost like they're designed for us to grow.
Interesting.
And that shift in perspective can be so powerful. I mean, Holiday even uses the example of losing your job. Most people would consider that a terrible thing.
No, definitely.
But imagine viewing that job loss, not as like a failure, but as an opportunity, like a chance to pivot to a career you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
Suddenly the obstacle becomes like a catalyst for positive change, almost like a hidden door opening up.
It's like reframing your thinking. You know, instead of thinking about all the setbacks, you're viewing them as a chance to maybe discover a path you never would have considered otherwise. I can see how that could be incredibly powerful for both our personal and professional growth.
Absolutely. And that shift in thinking is at the heart of Holiday's whole approach to perception. He also talks a lot about the importance of objectivity. So that means focusing on the things you can actually control,
Right.
rather than wasting energy on the things you can't. Like, let's say a project gets delayed.
Okay.
Instead of like freaking out about all the factors outside of your control, the Stoic approach would be to focus on what you can do to adjust and move forward.
So it's about taking action, which is a perfect segue into the next part of the framework, action. But it's not just about blindly doing something when we hit a wall.
No, not at all.
Holiday talks about persistence, being iterative and flexible, right? It almost reminds me of that concept of failing fast and often, where the emphasis is on, rapid learning and iteration.
That's a really interesting connection. And there are definitely some parallels. But while the speed of iteration can be important, I think the Stoic approach to action goes a bit deeper than that. It's not just about rushing through failure. It's more about taking those attempts, those setbacks, and using them as valuable data.
So it's not just about speed, it's about being more strategic, making informed decisions based on the feedback you're getting from those actions. Now, the final piece of the puzzle is will. And I'll admit, that one has always seemed a little intangible to me.
It can seem that way at first,
Yeah.
but think of it like your unwavering inner strength. So it's that resilience that helps you bounce back after you fail, the endurance to push through when things are difficult,
Yeah.
and the ability to stay calm even when everything around you feels chaotic. It's like building that inner fortress, that unshakable core that helps you weather any storm.
Okay, I like that analogy. So it's like building up that internal fortitude so you can stay grounded when things get turbulent. The book gives some great examples of this. Recovering from a failed project, pushing through a really tough rehab program, or staying calm during a crisis. These are all real-world examples of what this concept of will looks like in action.
Exactly. And these examples show that will isn't just some abstract idea. It's a practical skill that you can cultivate. You can strengthen it through conscious effort. And it's about building that resilience, that ability to face anything life throws your way.
So we've got perception, where you see the obstacles as opportunities. Then there's action, which is about taking deliberate steps, informed steps. And finally, will, that unwavering inner strength to help us persevere. It's a pretty solid foundation for turning obstacles into opportunities. But I'm guessing there's more, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, good. I can't wait to hear what else Holiday has in store for us.
You're right. There's definitely more. He goes beyond those like fundamental principles, and he gets into some really interesting advanced strategies.
Okay.
He talks about harnessing the power of persistence, understanding the art of timing, and something I think is super relevant today, is mastering the art of creative problem solving.
Creative problem solving. Yeah, that's something I'm always trying to get better at.
Right.
And Holiday suggests we should try to find those like unconventional ideas and really embrace brainstorming, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so easy to get stuck in the same old thought patterns. Like, how do you break free from those mental ruts and actually start coming up with those innovative solutions?
That is such a great question. And honestly, it's something that even like the most experienced thinkers struggle with. Holiday really emphasizes the importance of getting a diverse range of perspectives.
Okay.
So it's not just about like your own ideas. It's about actively seeking out input from people who have different backgrounds, different experiences, different ways of thinking.
Right.
And when you do that, it can really help to challenge your own assumptions and spark those aha moments that lead to truly innovative ideas.
So it's about getting out of our own echo chambers and being open to those different viewpoints, even the ones that maybe make us a little uncomfortable at first.
Exactly.
But it's not just about gathering those diverse perspectives, is it? You also have to have the courage to experiment, to try things that might not work, right?
Yeah. You're exactly right. Experimentation is key. It's about being willing to test those unconventional ideas and be okay with things not always going according to plan. Remember what we were talking about earlier with action. Each experiment, whether it's successful or not, gives you valuable data.
Yeah.
And you can use that data to refine your approach, and ultimately it'll lead you closer to a solution.
This reminds me of something I've always found so fascinating about the creative process. Like, you often have those unexpected breakthroughs that come from what seemed like a mistake or a failure at first.
Oh, yeah.
Like those happy accidents can lead to the most innovative discovery.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to this idea that failure is part of the process. You can't be afraid of it.
Right.
The Stoics understood that setbacks and obstacles are inevitable, but they saw those setbacks as opportunities to learn, adapt, and ultimately become more resilient.
Okay, let's get real for a second. All of this sounds amazing in theory, but putting these principles into practice, it can be really tough. We're human after all, right? Yeah.
Holiday acknowledges those common challenges in the book, right?
He does. In fact, there's a whole section of the book where he addresses those obstacles. Yeah. Those real things that we all face when we're trying to actually turn challenges into opportunities.
So what are some of the challenges that he highlights?
So he talks about the difficulty of dealing with unexpected setbacks. There's the pressure of stress, the fear of failure, the struggle of just navigating problems that are really complex, and even, staying motivated when things get really, really tough.
Wow, it's like he's reading my mind. Those are all challenges I think we've all experienced at some point.
Right, especially in today's world.
Especially today, yeah. But I'm guessing he doesn't just leave us hanging with these challenges, does he?
No, he doesn't.
I'm hoping there are some solutions in there, too.
Oh, yeah. He offers some really practical solutions that are based on those Stoic principles. Like shifting your perspective and focusing on what you can control.
What are some of the strategies that really stood out to you? Well, when it comes to those unexpected setbacks, one of the most important things is to just stay flexible. So that means not getting too attached to your plans and being willing to adapt when things change because, they inevitably will. He also talks about, assessing the situation objectively, focusing on what we can control, instead of dwelling on those things that we can't change.
That's a really great point. It's so easy to get wrapped up in all the emotions of a setback and just completely lose sight of the fact that we have a choice in how we respond. It reminds me of, what the Stoics talk about all the time, that power we have to control our thoughts and our reactions.
Exactly. And then when it comes to managing stress and all that pressure, Holiday really reminds us that it's important to take care of ourselves, both physically and mentally.
Right.
So that means prioritizing sleep, getting enough exercise, and those mindfulness practices can really help us to build up resilience, from the inside out.
It's funny you mentioned that. I remember reading about the Stoic practice of negative visualization. It's where you actually imagine things going wrong, which sounds counterintuitive.
It does.
But he suggests that, mentally preparing for those potential setbacks can actually help us build resilience and reduce anxiety when those challenges actually do come up.
Yeah. It's like you're training your mind to be more adaptable. So you're not as easily thrown off course when things don't go as planned. I've actually tried this myself.
Really?
It's surprisingly helpful for those what-if anxieties that can just keep you stuck sometimes.
I've heard about that technique, but I haven't actually tried it. Maybe I should give it a shot. I can see how it could be helpful for building up that inner fortress we were talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely worth exploring. And speaking of challenges, one that I think resonates with so many people is overcoming the fear of failure. I mean, it can hold us back from doing so much,
Yeah.
from pursuing our goals and taking risks.
Yeah, fear of failure is a big one. I know I've definitely struggled with it in the past. It's like that little voice in your head saying, what if you're not good enough? Or what if it all goes wrong? And
Right.
sometimes that voice can be so loud. So how does the obstacle is the way address that challenge?
Well, Holiday really challenges us to look at failure differently. So instead of seeing it as like this personal defeat, he says we can choose to view it as feedback, an opportunity to learn and grow from it.
Okay.
He reminds us that every successful person, every innovator, every leader, they've all faced tons of setbacks along the way. And it's those failures that ultimately help them to refine their approach and achieve those big goals.
It's like that famous Thomas Edison quote, right? Where he talks about finding 10,000 ways that something doesn't work
Yes.
on his way to discovering how it does work. It's a great reminder that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's actually part of the journey.
Exactly. And I think that's such an empowering message. It's about shifting your focus away from avoiding failure and instead embracing it as a necessary step in the process of growing and learning.
Yeah, it's like changing your relationship with failure. Instead of something to be ashamed of, you see it as like a source of information that can help you improve.
Right.
But even with that new perspective, I think a lot of people still struggle with staying motivated, especially when they're working towards those big long-term goals. It's easy to lose steam along the way, especially when progress is slow.
Absolutely. It's like starting a new exercise routine. At the beginning, you're super enthusiastic and motivated.
Yeah.
But then a few weeks in, that motivation starts to fade. So how do you keep that fire burning, especially when those obstacles and setbacks start to pop up?
That's the million-dollar question. What does the obstacle is the way say about that?
Well, Holiday gives us some really great strategies for maintaining momentum and staying connected to our goals, even when things get really tough.
I'm all ears because this is definitely something I'm always working on.
One of the most powerful things you can do is reconnect with your purpose.
Right.
Like, why are you doing this in the first place? What are you hoping to achieve? What kind of impact do you want to make?
Okay.
Reminding yourself of that bigger vision, your why, it can really help to reignite your motivation when you start to feel lost.
It's like that classic advice, keep your eye on the prize. But it's not just about focusing on that end goal, is it?
Right.
It's also about like finding ways to actually enjoy the journey itself.
You got it. And another great strategy that Holiday talked about is breaking those large goals down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
So if you focus on achieving those smaller milestones along the way, it creates a sense of momentum and you get to celebrate those victories. And that can really help to fuel your motivation and keep you moving forward.
I love that. It's like creating those little rewards along the way that keep you excited about the process. It also makes the journey feel less daunting, like you're making progress, even if it's just one small step at a time.
Exactly. And, don't underestimate the power of finding inspiration from other people who have faced similar challenges.
Right.
Reading those stories of resilience, hearing about how other people have turned obstacles into opportunities, that can be incredibly motivating.
It's like that feeling you get when you're watching like a really inspiring documentary or you're reading about someone who's achieved something amazing.
Yeah.
Despite facing incredible odds.
Yes.
It reminds you that if they can do it, so can you.
Right. We're all part of this shared human experience.
Yeah.
And, by connecting with those stories of people who overcome their own obstacles, we can tap into this like collective sense of resilience.
Yeah.
Like it shows us what's possible.
So we've explored these three core principles: perception, action, and will. We've talked about some of the advanced strategies for actually turning those obstacles into opportunities. And we even covered some of the common challenges we might face along the way. It's been a pretty insightful journey. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the obstacle is the way, what's the big takeaway? What's the one thing our listeners can apply to their own lives, no matter what obstacles they're facing?
I think the real heart of this book, The Obstacle is the Way, is about a shift in perspective. Instead of looking at obstacles as these roadblocks to your happiness or success, what if we saw them as opportunities? Opportunities for growth and learning and even like transformation.
It's about recognizing that those challenges are just a part of life,
Right.
And how we deal with them, that's what really shapes us.
Exactly. It's not about, wishing for a life without any problems. It's about having the tools to turn those problems into stepping stones.
Yeah, and what I really like about this book is that it doesn't just, like, talk about these ideas in a vacuum. It gives you all these examples of people who've actually lived this way.
Oh, for sure. And those stories are really inspiring. They show you that this isn't just some theory, it's something that's been proven over and over again.
Hmm.
Are there any of those stories that stand out to you?
There are so many. But one that always sticks with me is the story of Demosthenes, the Athenian orator. He overcame like a really bad stutter to become one of the greatest speakers of his time.
Oh, wow.
His dedication and his willingness to face that obstacle head on, it's just incredible.
It's like he didn't let that challenge define him. He used it to become even stronger.
Exactly. And it shows that sometimes those things we see as weaknesses can actually become our greatest strengths.
If we're willing to put in the work, right?
Absolutely. Another story that I find really powerful is the story of Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, he faced all these health issues throughout his life, but he still became a symbol of strength and resilience.
Yeah. It's like our limitations, they don't have to hold us back. They can actually push us to achieve even more.
These stories are proof that the ideas in The Obstacle is the Way. It's not just some ancient philosophy, it's a timeless set of tools. Tools that can help us navigate the challenges we face in life.
It really is. And what I find so empowering about this book is that it reminds us that we all have that potential. It's not about having some special ability. It's about having the right mindset.
It's about taking those challenges and choosing to see them as opportunities for growth. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one thing you want to leave our listeners with? What's the key takeaway they can apply to their lives?
The next time you hit an obstacle, remember that the obstacle's the way. That obstacle, it's an opportunity to become stronger and wiser.
It's such a great reminder. And to our listeners, think about a challenge you're facing right now. How could you use these principles in your own life? What's one small step you can take to turn that obstacle into an opportunity? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you have the power to turn any obstacle into a stepping stone on your path to growth and fulfillment.